This 15-year-old girl killed her father to be with her 19-year-old boyfriend. But this case is most well known for having the most bizarre police interrogation in all of true crime.
We can do this the nice way, or we can do it the hard way and I can release my bipolar.
ELLIE Fraiar was the father to 3 daughters, his oldest child being 15-year-old Ellie. Ellie was known to be incredibly intelligent and also very bright for her age, but she was also said to be incredibly manipulative. Raising Ellie through her teen years was not easy on Erin. Allegedly, when Ellie was only 13 years old, she was caught sleeping with another student on the school bus. Somehow things only got worse when she turned 15 and got a new boyfriend, 19-year-old Gavin. Gavin is a very odd and sleazy character in today's case. He was the kind of older, creepy guy that would hang around outside the local middle school to try and pick up preteen girls. There was also a running joke at Gavin's high school, which is not funny at all. This is not a funny joke, but students would say that if there was ever going to be an active shooter at school, that it would most likely be Gavin. And when it came out that 19-year-old Gavin had started dating 15-year-old Ellie, he lost the majority of his friends and was bullied so badly at school that he dropped out of high school only 3 months short of graduation. And obviously, Ellie's father, Aaron, did not approve of this relationship. He tried to forbid Ellie from seeing Gavin. He threatened Gavin with a firearm to stay away from his underage daughter. And when none of it seemed to work, he actually pressed charges against Gavin for statutory SA. Ellie is only 15, and when you're 15, you think that your relationship is your entire life and you would die without this person. So she began to scheme with her boyfriend, Gavin, and also Gavin's older friend, a 22-year-old boy named Russell, on how she could escape her father and be with her boyfriend. Ellie's original plan was that she would just run away and be with Gavin, but it was actually the friend Russell's idea that they should just get rid of her father so he couldn't go out looking for her, and Ellie thought that this was a great idea, that they would just kill her father, but her boyfriend Gavin did not want to commit murder. So Ellie spent the next handful of months trying to convince Gavin to go along with Russell's plan to kill her father. She told Gavin that her father was actually the abusive predator in her life and he was doing a lot of inappropriate things with her. And she also told Gavin that she was pregnant and it was his job to protect her and their unborn child. We've never been able to confirm or deny if Ellie's accusations against her father were real, but we do know with 100% certainty that Ellie was never pregnant. She never thought she was pregnant, and this was only a way to manipulate Gavin to go along with this plan, and it worked because he did agree to kill her father. On September 30th, 2017, Gavin and Russell attempted to break into Aaron's home only to retreat after they saw that Aaron's girlfriend was also spending the night. So they came back a couple days later on October 2nd to commit the grisly act. When Gavin snuck in through the bedroom window, he actually tripped over a trash can and woke up Ellie's father, Aaron. Ellie apologized to her father and said that she was the one who tripped over the trash can when she was going to the bathroom. And her father said, "Oh my gosh, please stop scaring me," because he was still spooked over these mysterious people trying to break into his house only a few nights earlier. So Aaron quickly went back to bed, and then Ellie went and grabbed a metal baseball bat that her father had put near the door for protection because of this recent break-in. It's like some weird sense of like irony, I think, in her head to use this item that he was using to protect himself to commit the murder against him. She gave it to her boyfriend Gavin, and then he beat her father to death while he slept. And all of this is happening while Ellie's 2 younger sisters are awake in the other room and they're listening to the entire thing. Gavin and Russell then took Aaron's body to his own trunk of his own car, and then all 3 of them left with $40 that they had stolen from Aaron's wallet. They then dumped Aaron's body in a nearby embankment and abandoned his car, and then just took off on foot and were walking around the neighborhood. A neighbor actually heard these chilling noises that were coming from next door and called a wellness check on her neighbor. First responders went to the home. They found Aaron and his oldest daughter Ellie missing, but there was a large pool of blood where Aaron usually slept. Within hours, they found Ellie, Gavin, and Russell just walking around the neighborhood and brought them into custody, and shortly later they did find Aaron's body and his car. Now we're gonna get into the most bizarre, strangest police interrogations that have ever been conducted in true crime history. While being questioned, 15-year-old Ellie was extremely uncooperative. She denied even being Ellie. She said that she was an 18-year-old girl named Rain. She would refuse to speak, and when she did speak, it would just be lies.
Hi. Hello. Ellie? No. What's your name? I have the right to remain silent.
And on the other hand, Russell was extremely cooperative. He would not stop yapping. He was very helpful, very friendly, and very normal with the detectives while he was speaking to them. But then when the detectives left the room, Russell's personality completely changed and he became an almost cartoon villain.
Now here's the thing. I know the cops' twisted little pathetic rule game. And actually, sometimes I like to think that I invented the rule book. I'm not exactly bragging, but I use reverse psychology. You want to play hardball? I played baseball when I was younger. Huh? I wouldn't go there. And I know everything that I'm saying is being recorded, and I'm doing it on purpose. I can easily turn the speaker off and rant, and then you guys will come in thinking I'm a loony because you don't hear me. You do know I know you're listening, right? So listen here. ELLIE FRIAR is my client, my protectee. I would like to see her acting, being polite. I know you're looking directly at me, aren't you? The information I gave is not worth $6. It's worth a lot more. So, we can do this the nice way and we negotiate, or we can do it the hard way and I can release my bipolar. Let's make a deal. Do-do-do-do. 1, thanks for the food. 2, I see ELLIE and Gavin because they are both under my protection. 3, before you release ELLIE to her parents, or parent, do a background check as well as a DNA test, as well as, well, not DNA, a drug test. And if you find out that her parent, her mom, is in fact doing drugs, you are to release her to me. Tell him to release Gavin and ELLIE. Thank you. And I know I'm being recorded. You can keep that on there. Unless you're a nice cop, then I take it back. But if you're one of those two-timing, donut-eating piece of crap that don't like rules, a high school bully with a badge, I'm sorry, buddy, but I eat high school bullies for breakfast. I'm not demanding, I'm asking nicely. As a kind civilian that also knows how to manipulate cops.
Gavin was the only one to just skip the dramatics and make a full confession, but none of them would ever express any remorse for what they did to Ellie's father, Aaron. About 5 hours into Ellie's interrogation, she began to speak with the detectives, but she was using a baby voice. It was clearly a fake voice. She was also drawing pictures with crayons that the detectives gave her. I think she's trying to act like she's younger than she actually is. 15 is young, but she's acting like a 6-year-old. She was telling the investigators that her father was abusive and he deserved to die, but that her and her boyfriend were innocent, and she put all the blame on Russell. At one point, ELLIE actually tried to negotiate with the investigators, make a little deal that if they let her and her boyfriend go off these murder charges, that she would tell them about minors that she knew that were smoking grass. Ultimately, Gavin did plead guilty and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. ELLIE also pled guilty and was sentenced to 25 years with the chance of early release after 20 with good behavior. And Russell originally pled no contest and was sentenced to 15 years, but then later took a plea deal and pled guilty with the sentence of 7.5 years with a chance of parole after only 3. This case is incredibly controversial for so many reasons. We could talk about the complexities forever. For one thing, Russell, who got the lightest sentence, was the oldest person in this conspiracy. He was 22, the other people were 19 and 15. He received, the chance of parole after 3 years. It was his idea to commit this murder, and he had the largest hand in actually planning it. Then you have Gavin, who got the harshest sentence, and it was him who actually did commit the murder. But there's some people who say that he was manipulated because he was originally unwilling, and then, you know, she lied about being pregnant, but I don't buy it at all. I think Gavin needs to be in prison 100%. And then when it comes to Ellie, people feel very differently. She was said to be extremely intelligent and gifted, and a lot of people believe that even at 15 years old, she was far more intelligent than her two adult male counterparts in this conspiracy, that she was the mastermind of the entire thing. While other people say that she was only a child, she was being, you know, groomed by this predator. And they also do believe her accusations against her father with the abuse, and that she was so desperate to get away from her father that she lied about being pregnant because she was that desperate to escape her father. I'm really interested to get your guys' takes on this case. I'm going to be reading every single comment because this case is so insane and so complex. And then you have the interrogations clips just on top of that. So definitely let me know all your guys' thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. She was a model turned influencer turned cult leader who enslaved and sold her own followers into human trafficking. A cult can really be anywhere, hiding in plain sight, even on social media. I swear, you guys have been nonstop DMing me for weeks about this case here on TikTok and also over on Instagram, which is kind of ironic if you think about it. Kat Torres grew up really poor in Brazil, but she always felt like she was destined for more. She was always told about how beautiful she was, and at a very young age, she got into the world of modeling, which she was quite successful at. And then in 2013, at the age of 24 years old, model Kat Torres was photographed with the Leonardo DiCaprio. She definitely implied that the two of them were dating, although Leo definitely denied it. But regardless, this skyrocketed Kat into the spotlight. She got signed to a really big modeling agency. She was living in LA and New York City, and she was gaining a lot of followers on Instagram where she showed off her perfect life and her luxurious lifestyle. This is also around the time that Kat began using substances of the psychedelic variety, which changed Kat's personality, arguably for the worse. And Kat's online presence also changed. She had a rebrand from Insta Baddie to Spiritual Guru, where she would post about her aura and the magic of eating vegetables. She also claimed that she was a life coach and also a hypnotist. She also claimed that she was a prophet and was in contact with a higher power. Can it be any more cult leader 101? Kat also began selling her magic powers to her 1 million followers on Instagram in like virtual coaching, which she would charge hundreds of dollars for. Like, imagine if I tried to sell you guys like a Zoom chat with me for $700. And then Kat had the bright idea to invite some of her followers to come work for her, come live with her, be her live-in personal assistant, and she would also coach them on how to be influencers and be millionaires. Imagine your favorite influencer sent you a DM and invited you to come live with them, and they would give you this massive online following. For a lot of young women, that would be a dream come true. And for Desiree and Letitia, who are both huge fans of Kat, they jumped at the opportunity. Both of these girls are obviously very beautiful. They were both very young. They had been fans of Kat's for years. They bought her online courses, and they were also both originally from Brazil. And after moving in with Kat, from the online presence, you would believe that this was an idyllic dream come true. 3 beautiful best friends sharing this perfect life, this luxurious life together, but it was not true. Upon arriving at Kat's house, both of the girls were immediately cut off from their friends and family and were brainwashed into thinking whatever Kat said was the key to their happiness and success. Both girls were also forced to bleach their dark hair blonde to look just like Kat's. She's creating these like weird little clones of herself. And the job that these girls thought that they were coming here to do was nothing like it was advertised. They were forced to do everything and anything Kat told them to do, and also they were not being paid, like at all, not a penny. And Kat also stole their passports, so they were unable to leave and return to Brazil. They were enslaved by someone that they just followed on Instagram and admired. And then for Kat, not paying the girls for the work that they were doing for her wasn't enough for her anymore. She needed them to actually be making her money. So she started to force them into S-work. She created profiles for both the girls on escort websites and then began to sell them against their will at an hourly rate to creepy men online. And then Kat was pocketing all the money. So not only has Kat enslaved her followers, but now she's selling them online against their will, which constitutes human trafficking. But at this point, Desiree and Letitia's families have both reported them missing and believed that they were both being held hostage by an influencer. And then the media caught wind of this, and there were a lot of eyes on Kat, and she had a lot of explaining to do. So she wages full-out war on anyone that would question her with social media as her battleground. She would send her 1 million followers to harass anyone that came against her and even send them like death threats.
Hope you listen to this, you understand this? Die. Leave me and my family alone.
And this is supposed to be like a spiritual guru influencer, you know, talking about crystals and enlightenment. Authorities do find the escort profiles that were made of the two girls and also found out that a lot of money was being transferred to Kat's bank account every single month. So Kat was finally arrested and deported back to Brazil, and the two girls were also brought back to Brazil and reunited with their families, and from what I've seen, they're doing a lot better, but obviously there's a lot of trauma that has to be worked through. And then just a few months ago, in July of 2024, Kat was found guilty and she was sentenced to 8 years in prison for human trafficking and enslavement, which does not seem like enough time, and to this day she still does not believe that she did anything wrong and also still claims to have magical powers. If you watched the end of this video, thank you so much. Let me know in the comments what you think about this crazy story. Also, if you ever even heard about it before, because I had no idea about this until you guys were nonstop DMing me over on Instagram. While you're in the comments, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next, and I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow with another crazy case. He's the most infamous serial killer in the entire world. What is it about Ted Bundy that continues to intrigue people decades later? Today I'm going to try and fit in as many details I can about the life and crimes of Ted Bundy in one video, while also hopefully sharing something that maybe you did not know about the most well-known serial killer in the entire world. Ted Bundy was born November 24th, 1946 to a young unwed mother, and in the 1940s that was a big no-no. To avoid further shame on the family, Ted Bundy was raised by his grandparents and grew up believing that his biological mom was actually his older sister. The thing that's different about Ted Bundy than other well-known serial killers is that there was nothing that happened, as far as we know, in Ted Bundy's life that made him this way. He was a born psychopath with disturbing behaviors that started as early as 3 years old. Like on one afternoon while Ted Bundy's aunt was taking a nap, she woke up and was completely surrounded in a circle of kitchen knives with a little 3-year-old Ted Bundy just standing over her smiling like something out of a horror movie. Since he was a born psychopath, as a child, he was unable to feel and express emotions the way that other people can. He was seen as different, quiet, distant, shy, and he was bullied for it. As a young teen boy, he began committing petty crimes, as well as being a peeping Tom, and I feel like everyone we've talked about in the past week has been a peeping Tom. When he was 14 years old, he was a paper boy, and one day an 8-year-old girl disappeared from the same neighborhood that Ted Bundy's paper route was on. Her father says that Ted Bundy was stalking around their house only moments before she vanished, and unfortunately, this little girl would never be found. And although it's not confirmed, many people believe that this is Ted Bundy's first ever victim, and he began killing when he was only 14 years old. And then miraculously, after this 8-year-old girl disappeared, Ted Bundy gained confidence. His entire personality changed. He was confident and charming, maybe because he just got away with murder. Ted Bundy was smart, but definitely not as smart as he thought he was. He had an inflated ego and thought that he was better than everyone else. In college, Ted Bundy majored in psychology. There's a bit of irony for you, and here's some more irony. At one point, he worked for a hotline that people would call when they wanted to unalive themselves, so he helped talk people out of dying. Totally ironic. He also volunteered on a committee that was against SA violence, and there he helped write a pamphlet on SA prevention. A serial killer who was also at this point a serial R-worder helping prevent essay. Ted Bundy also studied law and also worked in politics at one point with dreams of being the president of the United States. Can you imagine that? A psychopath working in politics. And it was while he was working in politics that he traveled a lot and was able to commit murders in different jurisdictions and different states. It is really hard to determine when Ted Bundy began his killing spree. A lot of people believe that his first ever victim was when he was 14 years old with that 8-year-old girl, while other people believe it was in 1974 with his first confirmed victims, while other people believe it started back in the 1960s. Because that's the thing about Ted Bundy. Everywhere he went, beautiful young women were disappearing or winding up deceased. It was also around this time that Ted Bundy got his first ever girlfriend. It was his first love. Although we know that he is unable to feel love, this woman was beautiful and from a very wealthy, powerful, successful family. So although he did not love her, he loved the idea of her and what she could offer him. This woman ultimately ended up rejecting Ted Bundy, and then after this, all of his victims had a striking resemblance to this first girlfriend. He also had a second girlfriend, which is his more well-known girlfriend. She was a single mother named Liz. At one point, he was dating both of these women and was engaged to both of these women without the other one knowing. First confirmed victims were in 1974. The homes of beautiful young women were being broken into in the middle of the night. They were being found beaten, essayed, and unalived by Ted Bundy. And then quickly, he began to escalate his crimes, kidnapping women in broad daylight with one of his many ruses. He would get women to trust him by pretending to be injured. He would have like his arm in like a sling or be carrying crutches and ask women to help him put something in his car. He would also pretend to be a police officer and sometimes have a British accent. He would have all of these characters so he could like get away with his crimes, but he would tell people his name was Ted, like his real name. It was also around this time that his crimes began to escalate in an even more vile, disgusting way. He began revisiting the dump sites where he would put his victims and essay them after death, far into their decomposition. And this is the man that y'all were thirsting over in the 1980s, I do not forget. But since he was kidnapping all these women in broad daylight, there was a lot of eyewitnesses that, would see this man named Ted driving Ted's car, and they even had police sketches that looked a lot like Ted. So people in Ted's life that worked with him, and even his girlfriend Liz, started to be like, hey, Ted, you kind of look like this guy Ted that they're suspecting of being like a serial killer. Isn't that weird? The jig was up for Ted Bundy in Seattle, so he moved to Utah where he began killing again. Luckily in Utah, one of Ted's victims was able to escape and was able to identify Ted Bundy as the man who kidnapped her and essayed her. He was found guilty for this and sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison. He was then sent to Colorado to go on trial for a murder that they believed he committed there. And in Colorado, he decided during this trial that he was going to defend himself and be his own lawyer with his limited knowledge he had on the law. This granted Ted Bundy unsupervised access to the courtroom's library, where he jumped out of a 2-story window, ran off, and escaped for 6 days before being found. And then he attempted to escape again, but unfortunately this time he was far more successful. He cut a small hole in the ceiling of his cell. He lost 35 pounds so he could fit through the hole. From there, he stole the clothing of a prison guard and just walked out the front door. Before anyone even knew he was missing, he was halfway across the country traveling to Florida. At this point, it had been 2 years since he last killed someone, and he said that he was going to go on a frenzy. In the middle of the night, he broke into the sorority house at Florida State University, where about 30 young girls were sleeping with plans of massacring all of them. He brutally attacked 4 young girls, leaving 2 dead before he got spooked and just fled the scene. He ran only a few blocks away before breaking into the home of another young woman and brutally attacking her as well. About a month later, he kidnapped a 12-year-old girl from a junior high school. He essayed her and unalived her before he was eventually caught. He was caught driving a stolen car, driving erratically down the road. This time, he was arrested for a 3rd and final time. He went on trial again. He was his own lawyer again. It was actually the first trial to ever be televised nationally, and it was a media circus. Ted Bundy had a lot of adoring fans, and female fans and different suitors because he was so attractive and charming. And ladies, I mean this by the bottom of my heart, as a whole, we need to be having some higher standards because this is the most below looking average man I've ever seen in my entire life. This is absolutely disgusting, but it was actually during his trial for killing 12-year-old Kimberly Leach that he proposed to one of the women that were obsessed with him. Apparently, under state law, since he proposed to this woman in a court in front of a judge, they were like married by law apparently, and were able to have conjugal visits, and he got her pregnant. He was ultimately found guilty of all charges and sentenced to death row, where he for years maintained his innocence and tried to appeal multiple times, but when that did not work, it was time for plan B. Ted Bundy began to confess, and this is how we know like the limited knowledge that we do know on his amount of victims. His thought process was if he slowly began to confess to different murders, that they would postpone his execution date, which is such a double-edged sword because on one hand, of course, you want that information and you want to bring closure to families, but on the other hand, you don't want to let him win. Ultimately, they chose to execute him on January 24th, 1989, and all of his secrets died with him. By the end of his life, he confessed to 36 murders, but experts have tracked unsolved crimes fitting his MO with his own tracks, and they believe that he has upwards of 100 or more victims. I'm really interested to get your guys' take on this case, if you guys agree with, you know, executing him even though he probably had more information that could bring closure to the victims. Do you think it was justified so he did not win? Also, was I able to tell you anything about Ted Bundy that you guys did not already know? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, let me know what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much, and I will see you tomorrow. I'm sure at this point you've seen her all over social media, the 14-year-old girl that killed her own mother in cold blood, Carly Gregg. Carly's parents divorced when she was pretty young, and the custody battle over Carly got pretty messy between Carly's mom and Carly's dad. Allegedly, Carly's mom, Ashley, was pretty scared of her ex, Carly's father, which is the reason why Ashley even kept a loaded firearm in the home in the first place. And I can also assume that this is the reason why security cameras were placed in and outside the home as well. Carly's parents also had pretty different parental styles. While her father was an addict and reportedly would let Carly drink alcohol in his home as young as when she was only 12 years old, Carly's mother, Ashley, was apparently a devoted parent. By all accounts, she was very sweet, very nice, and loved her daughter very, very much. Carly was an exceptionally smart student. So smart, in fact, that she was able to skip 3rd grade altogether. Interestingly enough, around this exact same time when Carly was in 4th grade but supposed to be in 3rd grade, she first started to show signs of anxiety and depression. I speculate that this may be due to the pressure to succeed, but again, this is only my speculation. Carly was always described as being the perfect student. She even was awarded Student of the Month and Student of the Year, and she never got in any trouble until the 7th grade when she brought a knife to school. I don't have much other information about this incident, but I do think it's a pretty big jump from someone who was never a problem in school, never got in any trouble, to bringing a weapon into class. For this instance, Carly was removed from the school and put in an alternative school for 1 semester before returning back to her original school. This was also the same school that her mother, Ashley, taught math at. Also interesting, the therapist that Carly saw before being returned back to her original school said that the entire situation was blown out of proportion and that Carly was not a danger to anyone. But Ashley had seen a change in her daughter, and in January of 2024, so only 3 months before the tragedy of today's case, Carly was being treated medically for both anxiety and depression. Around this time, Carly had also began to experience with recreational substances. I'm talking grass, which is illegal in the state of Mississippi where they both lived. Also, this is just illegal in any state for a 14-year-old girl. Carly was sneaking out, she was rebelling, she had a secret boyfriend, and she also began to journal about some pretty dark things, talking about it's okay to be evil and discussing feeling like she did not need a family. On the afternoon of March 19th, 2024, Ashley and Carly returned home from school. Ashley had reason to believe that her 14-year-old daughter was either using grass and or vaping, and began to look through her daughter's room for evidence of such. Carly goes into her bedroom to confront her mother. She then passes the kitchen where the security camera was and then enters her parents' bedroom. She retrieves her mother's revolver, walks past the kitchen again, concealing the weapon, and then goes into her bedroom where she shot her mother, Ashley, 3 times, ending her life. In the kitchen, Carly grabs her mother's phone and texts her stepdad, posing as her mother, saying, "When are you going to be home, honey?" Carly can also be heard singing and humming while she does this. And remember, this is only seconds after ending her mother's life. Carly then texts one of her friends and says that that friend has to come over and there's an emergency. When the friend comes over, Carly asks her, "Have you ever seen a dead body?" and then proceeds to show her 16-year-old friend her mother's body. Carly also tells her friend that she plans to kill her stepfather Keith when he returns home, instructs her friend to wait outside for her, and then goes into the kitchen, removes the security camera, and hides it in the fridge. When Carly's stepfather Keith returns home, he was greeted with a loaded weapon pointed at his face by the hands of his loving stepdaughter. He loved Carly. He said that she was always a sweet girl. She does proceed to shoot at her stepfather, but luckily it only grazed him, and then he was able to get the weapon away from her. Carly then takes off with her friend on foot. They jump over the fence and then they run. I'm here thinking, what is this 16-year-old girl thinking doing this? If it was me in this position, I was told to wait outside after seeing my friend's mother's dead body, I would have taken off running without her. I hope that she was only just afraid in the situation and did not know what to do. Keith calls 911 and it is a devastating 911 call. And about 30 minutes after that 911 call is placed, Carly is found and arrested. Carly was being charged as an adult for murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence, but she was offered a plea deal, which in hindsight was a really, really good deal. Plead guilty and receive 40 years in prison. She could be out by the time she's 55, but she denied it. Her and her lawyer were both confident in their defense strategy, which was for Carly to plead not guilty by reason of insanity, stating that she was dissociated from reality and at the time did not know right from wrong. Carly was able to speak with multiple mental health professionals before her trial, and they all disagreed with her lawyer's defense that she was in touch with reality at the time and did not meet the standard for pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. I am not a mental health expert, but if you come here looking for my 2 cents, I will share it. I do believe that Carly was suffering with some kind of mental health at the time, but I do not believe that she was dissociated from reality at the time of killing her mother. I do not believe that she was so out of her mind at the time that she could be exempt from being held responsible, or that she did not know right from wrong at the time, and I do believe this for multiple reasons. People that are dissociated from reality don't try to cover up their crimes. On multiple instances, Carly shows that she understood what was happening at the time and also that she knew right from wrong. For one, concealing the weapon behind her back when she was in front of the cameras. Also, the fact that she tried to hide the camera in the first place before attempting to unalive her stepfather, Keith. Also, the fact that she even took her mother's phone in the first place to find out when her stepfather would be coming home. But again, that is just my opinion. I'm not a mental health expert, but the jury did agree, and ultimately, just 1 week ago on September 20th, Carly was found guilty of all charges, and she was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole at only 15 years old. So that is a long time that she will be behind bars. We talk often about children being charged as adults for a crime like murder and also being sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. People feel very different one way or the other. I've never really been able to make my mind up one way or the other. I really do think it's a case-by-case basis. My final thoughts are that Carly does need to be behind bars. I do not think that she was so out of her mind, dissociated from reality, and also she scares me. In the security footage, only seconds after ending her mother's life, how she coldly just walks into the kitchen, picks up a phone, starts texting away as she sings and hums, scares me. That is a scary person who I don't want walking around in society free to do it again. I do have to assume because of her age that her and her lawyers will attempt to appeal her sentence, try to get a lesser sentence. So I guess we'll have to keep updated on that if that happens. So make sure you follow for all case updates, and I love you guys so much. Let me know all your thoughts on this case in the comments. Let me know your opinions on charging children as adults, putting minors behind bars for life without the possibility of parole. And while you're there, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow or possibly even later today with another video. The cult, where 918 people all lost their lives. The cult of Jim Jones and the Jonestown Massacre. If you have never heard of this case before, it is going to shock you. Jim Jones was raised very poor in a very small town of Indiana. It was a very conservative area. Allegedly, there was a very large KKK membership in this area, where his father was allegedly a part of. Jim was a child throughout the 1930s and 1940s, which was a very racist time in the United States, but from a very young age, Jim was very passionate against the discrimination of African Americans. He was a huge advocate throughout his entire life for racial equality. When Jim got married, him and his wife actually adopted several children from different races in what he called his rainbow family, and reportedly Jim and his wife were the first white couple in Indianapolis to adopt a black child. Jim had his own dream of opening his own church where people of all races, all cultures, and all backgrounds would be welcome. Jim actually sold baby monkeys door to door to fund his new church that he called the People's Temple. And Jim definitely had a bit of a hero's complex, but with his new church, the People's Temple, he developed a God complex. Jim quickly was able to gain a large audience of African Americans and also people that just wanted to see a change in the world. Jim began to preach that he was a prophet, of course, because you're not a cult leader if you're not a prophet of God. He also claimed that he could bring people back from the dead, but also that he could heal people. And he began to heal people during his sermons, but it was all a lie. There was one instance where Jim actually drugged one of his church members. And when this woman woke up the next morning, she had a cast on her leg and was told that she fell and had broken her leg the previous night. And then during Jim's sermon, very dramatically, he demands that this woman's cast be cut off in front of everyone, and he heals her with his magic powers. And then he asked her to stand up and run, which she did, and people were in awe of him. And very quickly, people started to hear about this man, Jim, who has this church and he has these magical powers, and he began to gain an even larger following even faster. He had hundreds of members and then thousands. At this point, things were looking good for Jim. He had a lot of really loyal members. He was able to convince his members to sell their homes, sell their belongings, give him all of their money that he used to build this little community in California, which was the first Jonestown. It was also around this time that Jim began to use substances, and he became very paranoid that his followers would leave him, that people would talk out against him, and he was also very paranoid that the CIA would try to assassinate him. After the deaths of Martin Luther King Jr. and JFK, Jim Jones definitely believed the conspiracy that the CIA was behind this and that Jim Jones himself was going to be next. But this is around the time that some of Jim Jones's followers began to leave him, talk out against him. There were articles being written about him. The media began to talk about him. So Jim Jones decides that he has to get the heck out of Dodge. He decides he's going to move his entire following to the South American country of Guyana. And it was in Guyana that he decided he was going to build his own community away from the US government, away from the US government's rules, a place where his people could be free. And this is how Jonestown was born. Jonestown consisted of about 4,000 acres in the jungles of Guyana. There they had 60 buildings made, which they used as cottages to live in, stores, restaurants, schools. And his followers began to follow him to South America by the hundreds. But almost immediately after they got to South America, things began to change. Jones was definitely paranoid. The substances had gone to his head, and I think the power got to his head. Almost immediately, he began to take everything from his followers. They were definitely brainwashed. They were being controlled and essentially being held hostage in Jonestown. Back in America, there were some concerned family members and also former followers of Jim Jones that put together a group to spread awareness about what was going on in South America. And this actually caught the attention of California Congressman Leo Ryan, who decided he was going to find out for himself what was going on with Jim Jones and Jonestown in South America. In 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan, some family members, and also some news reporters all flew down to Jonestown together and were welcomed into Jonestown by Jim Jones. Jim threw a huge party for them, a huge welcome party. There were games and dancers, and everyone seemed really happy. And kind of at the beginning, Congressman Leo Ryan did believe that maybe all the accusations against Jim Jones were merely rumors.
All you know that I'm here to find out more about questions that have been raised about your operation here. But I can tell you right now that from the few conversations I've had with some of the folks here already this evening that whatever the comments are, there are some people here who believe that this is the best thing that ever happened to them in their whole life.
But that did not last long. Later on in the night, one of Jim Jones's followers actually slipped a note to one of the news reporters asking for help escaping Jim Jones and Jonestown. Unfortunately, due to the circumstances of this case, we don't know everything, all the awful things that Jim Jones was doing to his followers, but I definitely assume the worst. So Congressman Leo Ryan actually confronts Jim Jones about this note that one of his followers had slipped the news reporter. And Jim was very coy. He said that no one's being held hostage, and if they want to go, they're free to go. But Congressman Leo Ryan decides that he's going to stay a little bit longer, investigate, see what's really going on, see if other members come to him and tell him the truth about what's going on and their fears. But the next day, one of Jim Jones's members actually attempted to attack Congressman Leo Ryan with a knife. I can only assume that this was by the order of Jim Jones, but it worked because Congressman Leo Ryan and the news reporters decided they were going to leave and go back to America. They definitely had had enough at that point, and also 14 members of Jonestown decided they were going to also leave and escape Jonestown and leave with Congressman Leo Ryan. But only seconds before they were about to board onto the plane, members of Jonestown opened fire on them. They shot them, and unfortunately, Congressman Leo Ryan and 4 others were killed. Back in Jonestown, Jim Jones tells his followers that the congressman is now dead and that this is the end, that the U.S. government will be coming to Jonestown, they will be killing all of them, torturing their children, and he begins to hand out cyanide-laced Kool-Aid and orders everyone to drink, starting with the children and the babies. One woman actually stands up and she begs, says that there has to be another way, says, please just let me and my children leave. But Jim Jones orders one of his more loyal followers to shoot and kill her. About 5 people were able to escape and run and hide into the jungle, but the rest of Jim Jones's followers either drank the Kool-Aid or were forced to, and if they could not force them to drink, they were injected in the neck with cyanide. After everyone was gone, Jim Jones shot himself. He took the coward way out. After watching everyone die in pain by this awful poison, he just took the coward's way out. And there in Jonestown, 918 people died, which included 300 babies and children. Shockingly enough, there is some footage that shows the hundreds of dead bodies outside this commune. Online available if any of you guys want to see that. Just know it's extremely heartbreaking and disturbing and chilling and haunting to see. You can never unsee anything if you do choose to watch that. The massacre of Jonestown is known as the largest mass self-unaliving in history, although many people do believe that most of these people were murdered, that most of these people did not choose to drink the Kool-Aid on their own will. And from the Jonestown massacre, this is where the term drinking the Kool-Aid actually comes from. I'm really interested to get you guys' take on this case. Have you guys ever heard of this before? Do you think that anything like this could ever happen again in the future? Definitely let me know all your thoughts in the comments. And while you're there, please let me know what case you want to hear next. I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys tomorrow with yet another case.